So who's driving the bus? You or me? Because
You have a steering wheel. You should drive.
Okay.
I'm in no condition to drive.
Breaking Flames news as we jump in here. You can see just over here. I figured I'd park nice where you could see where I'm at. So
Beautiful.
I'm not in Calgary, nor am I in Vegas. I'm just over by the grain terminal here on the gravel road, not far from the dump where I was today. I had to do a dump run, as we call it here. And you're in Vegas, so none of it makes sense.
We're in a cabana, but I was in a pool, so
yeah. I figured you might have been. You know, the Flames have made a trade today, and just quick reaction because we didn't talk a whole lot before we got going here. It seems to make sense. The player, the return, all of it seems to really make sense for Craig Conroy and the Flames. Why don't you break it down?
Yeah, well, we talked a bunch in the last few months about expiring contracts, and you know that Sharon Govich is one and Kuzmenko's another, but Mangiapane at $5.8 million was the third forward that was set to expire at the end of next year. And the thought was, what kind of team is going to pay for a guy that scored more than 20 goals once in his career, $5.8 million? And then if they were going to pay that, what kind of asset would you trade for that? So the thought that I think we'd shared a lot was at half retention, you might be able to get an asset. Craig Conroy's done better than that. He's gone and got a second rounder, and Washington is going to pay the entirety of the salary for the final year of Andrew Mangiapane, who frankly doesn't really fit the Flames right now. He was a phenomenal Flame. He was a sixth rounder. He worked his way up from, playing in the farm team in the American League in California to the fourth line, to the third line, to a checking line with Michael Backlund. He scored an incredibly huge goal in 2022 against the Oilers and happened to have a career year with 35 goals and got paid for it. Hasn't looked like exactly the same guy since, but still a good NHLer. So I'm surprised by the return. I think it's stronger than we'd talked about for the last 6 months.
Yeah, I guess just for those that just happen to be jumping in, the Flames trade Andrew Mangiapane to the Washington Capitals for a second-round pick. Now, we believe that the pick belongs to it was a Colorado pick. So unless the Avs fall off the table, it could be a late second-rounder.
Yeah.
But it's a second-round pick, and the key, as you had said, there's no salary retention. So all $5.8 million comes off of the Flames cap, and it's not like they were buttoned up against the ceiling or anything.
No.
They've got so much room. We'll talk about it. But I guess it's curious what Washington is thinking. Again, maybe we're way off, but I remember we had this conversation a few weeks ago between you, me, and Rhett, and we said for Mangiapane, if you were would you get a third for Andrew Mangiapane right now? And we all said no.
Yeah, you would have to retain, right? That's sort of what we thought.
Yeah, you were going to have to eat some money. I didn't see this kind of a return for Mangiapane. Now, as you said, he's a great story. He plays in Barrie. He's a smaller player. He gets drafted in the 6th round, works his ass off, gets to the NHL, scored 35 goals. Only had 55 points, oddly enough, in that same season. But he scored 35 goals, right? So, but it's been a steady decline since. He went from 35 to 17. This past year, 14 goals. And I know we talked about it. Is it the weight of the contract? Is it the weight of $5.8 million on a long-term deal? But he just hasn't looked like the same player to me. Not just the offense, not just the goals. He was always a dog on a bone. He was always on it. And he just hasn't seemed the same. So whether it's injuries, whether it's contract, or maybe it's just age, I'm not sure. But, I hope he does turn things around. But this isn't the same player from even 2 years ago.
Yeah, we saw flashes of the Mangiapane that I think we saw a lot of in that career year. He also was probably slotted as nicely as you could be slotted that season when you had the top line in the NHL getting a lot of attention and he wasn't on it. Yeah. And the shooting percentage was through the roof. And it was a weird season where I think it was first half versus second half. And then there was the next season was home or away, or I had those backwards, but the splits it felt odd. And it was absolutely a heater. But I do think Washington thinks they're getting a 20-goal guy that can play middle six wing. And that's what he's been most of his career. So they clearly think they're competing, Dino. And as it was pointed out online by some, if they're just way out of it, they can still flip this guy at the deadline and I think get the third we thought they could always get for him. And if he's playing well, maybe more. Maybe they can recoup a higher second in theory as a rental. But we've talked about it. They're full on wing. Like Huberdeau, Sharangovich, Kuzmenko, Zeri, Pospisil. Some of these guys might be centers.
Coronado
for sure. Coleman, like wingers everywhere. And so would you like to see Jacob Pelche get some minutes if they're earned, or have him rotating through a fourth line with guys like Klapka, Hunt, Rooney? Like, also, there's a lot of wingers out there. And if you can open some salary, maybe the Buffalo Sabres will give you something really nice to eat the last 3 years of Jeff Skinner or something along those lines. Maybe not exactly something as painful, but if you're really trying to get another pick at the top of this draft, which I have the hunch that the Flames are, opening up, they're now up to what, 28
29 it's over 29 I think now.
Yeah, it's rated 29 million. Like, now you can do some things. Now you can take on a Jeff Skinner and say, but it's going to cost you your first, or whatever the situation might be. But Connie's up to stuff here. There's been a lot of people that have said to me in the last 48 hours, like, Spidey sense is tingling. I don't know what it is, but it makes sense to see this deal land today. It's a pick next year. It's not for tomorrow's draft, but not surprised there was a deal today. There was enough smoke around the Flames today.
And the funny thing is, because this is clearly a team in a rebuild, Mangiapane was 28, expiring contract. It didn't fit. This does. It makes a lot of sense for the Calgary Flames. But they're kind of oddly at a point where they don't need any more draft picks. Between 2 firsts, 3 seconds, you think about that in the course of 2 years, they're going to have, and it's not the biggest problem in the world, but you're going to have a lot of guys at prospect camp and at rookie camp that are all the same age or within a year of each other.
Yeah.
You don't want to draft that many players. It's great to have the assets. So I think it's a very good point by you. I've watched to see what they do. Do they take 2 firsts and throw them at somebody to try and get a little higher in the first round? If not this year, then maybe next year. Because I don't think you want to draft all those players.
I agree. I think it's a classic quantity of picks versus quality of picks. And if you can amass a lot of picks, you can put them together and theoretically move up to a higher slot. We saw, San Jose do that today. They moved from 14 to 11. They move up 3 spots. They give up the 10th pick in the second round to do it. If you're Craig Conroy with 28 overall, can you pair that with a couple seconds and get into the teens? Yeah. If you're Craig Conroy, can you put 3 seconds together in the next few years with number 9 to move to 7? They've got the financial flexibility to do a lot of things and take on some bad money. They also have the quantity of picks where they could smush them together and give them to teams that, like, we got a first and a fourth, that's it, and move up. I think of the Jankowski draft. The Flames had picked 13 and no second rounder. They moved back and got a second. There's lots of teams in that spot this year. The Flames this time could be the one that says, we're going to move up in the first and we'll give you one of these surplus seconds. You don't have a pick in that round. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see that happen tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a lot of cap space, which once we're done Friday, Saturday, and then you get into free agency. I know we'll talk next week about it, obviously, in the aftermath. But how do you best? You've done a lot of work. It's been a lot of cutting to cure for Craig Conroy. Now I think you're close to the time where you want to start curing. We talked to him the other day and just wondered how much more surgery do you do to this roster, to this team, before you start to try and put things back together again? And it feels like it's close. It's a lot of cap space. We saw that Jake Wallman deal the other day, where a second goes along with him. That's the type of deal you feel like. I agree. The Flames, you can help out some teams there and help yourself, because I think Wallman's a decent player. You know what? Just for, I know this is predominantly Flames fans, flip the script. What's Washington's thinking with this trade? Not to say they got fleeced or anything. They give up a second round pick that wasn't theirs. It's a late second, but they take on all the money on a player who has 1 year left, maybe that's good, maybe not. I'm just curious what the Capitals are thinking.
I think they're trying to remain competitive, maybe against what they should be doing or what the consensus would be what they are. Like I think they snuck in and shouldn't have gone into the playoffs. Charlie Lindgren got really hot and they did get in, but they weren't a good team. They didn't look like a playoff team. They got swept. But they're kind of pot committed on this Ovi thing, so they're going to be pretty mid for a few years here. And if
feels
rather than wait 4 years for a second rounder to be something or not, they'll take a Mangiapane who is an NHLer, right? Like it fits their we're going to try to compete window, whether they should be doing it or not.
And Mangiapane, it will not take a huge bounce back for him to be a 20-goal guy.
No,
right?
I mean, he's flirted with it.
Yeah, I don't know that he ever gets back to 35, but he had 17 2 years ago. I think he could be in the right situation. But they add Dubois, they add Mangiapane. It does feel like this is kind of a last-ditch effort, if not to get into the playoffs. It feels like this is for Ovechkin to try and get one last push. We'll see how it works. And I know this might be one of those things. It'll be, I'll grab the tape when Boomer was saying, because I saw in the chat already, somebody was suggesting if you had just kept Mangiapane into the season, you'd get a first for him at the deadline. I don't know.
I don't see a first. Sorry about
Washington, right? If they can spin him into a first-round pick, then good on them. I have a hard time seeing a team looking at Andrew Mangiapane as the player that they would give up a first-round pick for at the deadline if he's available.
No. Yeah. No, and look, like you moved Elias Lindholm at the deadline, who makes less than Andrew Mangiapane, and he's a much better player with a more 200-foot game and with a more well-established resume. I mean, I don't think at all that you're going to neighbor on a first. Now, if he wants to score 35 again, sure, but if he's an 18-goal checking line winger, which he is, those don't go for first. Like Jake Gensel didn't get a first. I'm sorry, I don't really see that happening. But yeah, like could the Flames have got a second at the deadline? Yeah, but I mean, now they can do things. They've got a slot for a kid, or they can take on an onerous contract from another team and get, compensated appropriately for that. Like, I'm curious about Jeff Skinner in Buffalo. I really am. They sit at 11 in the draft right after New Jersey. They will buy him out. It sounds like if they can't get a deal done. But what would you pay to get out of the last 3 years of Jeff Skinner's deal?
Yeah,
we saw famously Patrick Marleau's last year of his deal was like 6 something. And it was a first rounder that the Leafs sent to Carolina. I think that turned into the Drury kid, if I'm right, or Jarvis, that's a good player.
It was Seth Jarvis. Seth Jarvis pick.
And so if Buffalo really wants to speed this up, they can do a lot of things with Jeff Skinner's cap space, but someone's going to have to pay the rest of that deal. And a buyout hurts because there's a lot of term. It's 2/3 the money, double the term. Whereas if you're just like, we'll just pay him, give us your picks. I think Ottawa, I think Buffalo, I think New Jersey, I think Detroit. There's a lot of teams that are in the top 15 that I don't know if they need a pick right now as much as they want to be competitive tomorrow. They don't want to wait 2-3 years for someone to maybe be something or not.
The Skinner one's interesting because it's very fluid. Now I got to admit, because I was on a dump run today and I was not around it, but I was checking because of his no move clause. It's a to be determined situation still for him, right? Because
I don't think
deal in place, but he's not waived his no trade or whatever it is. So it's very fluid, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't know that anyone wants Jeff Skinner at his salary, but someone I think would be bribed to do it. There's enough teams with the cap space, and hey, this is in a window where we're collecting assets. We're not trying to win a cup. And if you're just coming out of a 3-year coma, we're sorry to alert you. The Flames are in that stage. They are not trying to win a cup this year. They are absolutely collecting young assets, young players, picks, and there's a really good way to weaponize cap space rather than pay guys too much on July 1 that are old. Help someone out with a problem and get more picks.
I'm always curious how, not so much how deals get done, but it's a 2025 first round pick. Why does it get done? Well, so it's a second round pick next year. So you're a year out. Why does it get done today? What was it about Mangiapane, because it's the full contract. I wonder how it came to be that this went down today.
Well, I think the Flames would like to open that slot, and I think Washington wants the player for this year. So the return, you could talk about sort of the time value of money. You'd rather have one in the hand than two in the bush. That whole thing, we understand a second rounder this year is theoretically worth more than one next year because you don't have to wait a year. But they want the player now, and the Flames don't need the player now. He's in a year. He turns into dust. He's a UFA. You don't get anything for him.
I get the Flames. Yeah, I get the Flames side, I guess, from Washington, because you're so close to July 1st. Could you have taken $5.8 million, which you're now spending on Mangiapane, and found some reasonable facsimile and saved your second round pick with a free agent? I don't know.
Probably.
It's a curious one to me from the Washington side.
And you pair it with the Dubois deal, and you're like, I don't know that these are, high probability win transactions. These are maybe, if you squint, it could work. And those were the type of deals that got the Flames to where they are now. Like, I don't know that it's
the
going
classic. It's the classic line. Is he a 20-goal guy, or is he a guy that scored 20? Right.
Well, and he's never.
He had 35, but
he scored 20 once in his life. He had 35 that year. So, what a safe bet is for Andrew Mangiapane is 15 to 18 goals. Yeah. I don't know that you couldn't find that in free agency for 5.8. It's a
lot of dough.
But it'll probably be a later pick. It's Colorado's. It's a year away. Yeah. So if we sort of adjust for the value of time, maybe you call that a third round pick tomorrow. So okay. That's kind of where we pegged his value. And for Conroy, he doesn't have to use that pick. He can take it and strap it to something else and try to move up in the draft tomorrow.
Yeah. It's fascinating work. I'll tell you what, Conroy hasn't sat in his hands. Right?
No.
I know when you left Calgary and we were done for obviously leading into the draft, we felt we had our bases covered because whatever was going to be done, the Markstrom deal was done, and now there was not going to be anything else done before the draft hit on Friday night. But yet here we are on Thursday talking about a trade. So I feel like that's it. Now I know Warner brought it up on the show the other day about Rasmus Anderson, and that's it's a different conversation, and it's a bigger one for sure, obviously. But I wonder if that's one we might be having sooner than later too, with how his contract is structured and how valuable someone like him is at that cap hit.
I look at Ottawa at number 7, and they've got 3 really good defensemen on the left side: Sanderson, Chychrun, Shabbat. They're going to have to do something there. They don't have enough on the right side. Rasmus Anderson's a right shot defenseman. He's got 2 years left at a very reasonable number. They don't need another kid at 7. If the conversation started and you're Steve Staios and I'm Craig Conroy and I said, hey, we'd love number 7, you guys could use someone like Rasmus, and this is kind of where we were on Markstrom before the deal happened, who would have to add more and who would say that's not enough? I don't know, but I know that he'd be a good fit there. And if all of a sudden you can upgrade 28 and get a second pick in the top 10, I'm not saying these are easily done, but Craig Conroy could turn the ship around pretty quickly if he has, 2 picks in the top 10 here tomorrow, for sure.
And just so we're clear, completely spitballing. I've heard nothing other than, Rhett brought it up on the show as we just talked about the evolution of this roster and as it moves, and it does, because here's a 28-year-old Mangiapane. He's aged out for where this team is going to be
in a year,
in a few years, and Anderson is not that.
Anderson's
that far
older.
Off of that.
Anderson's older. Anderson will be 31, I believe, on the first year of his next contract. That does not fit their window. And he didn't have, in the circumstances of this sort of reloady, retooly, rebuildy season, he didn't have a good year. I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't.
I wonder too, and it has nothing to do with it, and you're paid a lot of money and you got to be a pro. What's Nazem Kadri and Uyghur and Coleman? What are those guys thinking today as they see another guy leave and no warm body coming back in?
Well, I think they see what we're all seeing. This is clearly a team that's rebuilding, not retooling. Yeah. And the question for those players is, how long will it take? And do I see the vision of a quick turnaround? And what am I willing to sacrifice if I am going to get out of here? Because to be frank, they don't hold any leverage. They don't make NHL money unless they report and show up to the team that holds the rights. But yeah, you could politely ask to leave. I don't know that it does anything. Nazem Kadri's better than a lot of teams' second-line centers, but a lot of teams don't want to pay 5 more years. He's already 34. Like,
the other part of it is too, this is almost stripping it right down to the studs. You're starting.
If you move Anderson, you absolutely are. Yeah.
Right. You look at the bodies that have gone out, Hannafin and Lindholm and Markstrom. I mean, you've torn it nearly down to the foundation. You need some guys who have played some seasons in the NHL. Mm-hmm. It's like when you have to send those preseason rosters to other. Well, there's a minimum requirement of NHL games played. The Flames are in danger of needing to send friggin' Coleman and Weegar to all those games because they don't have a lot of NHL experience on this team right now.
Wow.
You need some guys in that room to be the leaders, and it might suck, and it does not look like a cup is coming in the next year.
Yeah.
But you're being paid to be a pro, and it might be tough, but it's gonna be a test of their professional level this year for sure.
Well, and Kadri passed that test this year. Weegar had a career year. He passed that test. I thought Backlund had a good year as the captain, all things considered, that, he's 35. Coleman had a career year.
A ton. Yeah.
The one guy that didn't deal with it well was Rasmus Anderson. Yeah. So they do have, and, those are a lot of vets. That's enough to insulate. I don't think you want more than that. Thus, purging of all these, 30-year-old guys you could have extended. But yeah, if you found the right deal for one of these older guys, like there's 3 years left on Coleman, you could do it. I don't. Mm-hmm. They're not inexperienced yet, but there's very clearly 4 or 5 guys that have most of the experience on the team. Like Backlund's going to hit 1,000 games this year. Coleman, a lot of experience. Huberdeau, veteran. Weegar, Kadri. Like they're not young. It's just that there's the seniors ward, and then there's a bunch of really fresh guys.
Yeah, and it's like you say, and it's not that they're ineffective. They've all had great years. It's just that mindset for those guys. Coleman has a cup. Kadri has a cup. Obviously, Backlund doesn't. Mm-hmm. You gotta pack your lunch and go to work. A few days, I would think there will be some tough days to head into the office for some of those guys. Now, and I know we'll talk because we got the show tomorrow. I know Craig was talking about just potential goals and targets for July 1st, and he talked about maybe depth goaltending. We asked him about that with the uncertainty. I guess it's uncertainty, just whatever, but injuries, they can take a while with what's up for Vladar, and that Wolf is going to be the guy, and what they'll do on the blue line. They've got so much money. They could do some big money short-term stuff, and I know we've talked about that. I wonder if Flames fans almost have to kind of brace themselves to be ready to see some big numbers, some 4 or 5s, maybe like something in 6, but keep an eye on the turn to see what that ends up being, because really salary cap is of zero consequence for this team.
Yeah, I don't know that it would happen Monday, but if the market for a player isn't there that the agent thought there would be, let's go to Calgary short term, get a higher AAV than we were looking for anyway, have a good year, be in bigger spots, and then, basically kick it down the road for a year and see if we can't get what we were looking for next summer. In the goalie market, I think you're looking at sort of that 2-3 type guy. Like, I don't know where Cam Talbot's at in terms of what the ask would be, but he's 36. Would he come somewhere for $1.5 million, $2 million? That's a nice,
it might be one of those things where a guy has played enough years, either he's won or he hasn't won, and he just looks at it and thinks, I got a couple years left. Let's try and pad the checking account as much as we can here, and the kids' trust fund. Let's see how much we can get into that. Because Calgary's paying more than anybody else might be at this point, even though we might not do a bunch of winning.
And that's why I don't think it's a Monday thing. Because I think if you're 36 years old and you've got a year or two left, you immediately look at where can I win? But there's a lot of guys that won't, get interest from contenders. Like, where's Cam Talbot going to sign that could win a cup? Just for example. So maybe it's August or September, and it's like, yeah, I'll show up for $1 million, I guess, because Colorado didn't want me. I think there's certainly, it would make sense to go get another defender. I want to see what happens with Shillington here. We all assumed it would be done. It isn't yet, but that doesn't mean it won't get done. But if they don't get him done, which I think is still the least likely outcome, they're going to go spend on a defenseman because, again, you can give more AAV, shorter term, and when this team's competitive again, it's not an onerous contract, and they just need to insulate a rookie goaltender this year, whatever you'd call Dustin Wolf. Was it, how many career starts has he got, 18 or something?
Yeah, he's a rookie goalie for all intents and purposes. But you're right, they've got plenty of bodies on the blue line.
Yeah, I mean, lots of depth, not a lot of top four.
Yeah, it's not a lot of, and it sounds shitty to say, but it's not a ton of quality there to insulate the young goalie who might need some help over the course of a season.
So let's say like it's an Alex Carrier, Matt Roy, someone like that, and some of those guys are going to be popular and they're going to go to contenders. But someone that is a second pair guy, that's what they should spend on if they're going to spend anything in free agency. Because Miramanov has been played as a top four. That would be a heck of a jump to be an 8 in Vegas last year and then suddenly be a 4. Shillington hasn't looked like a 4 without Kristanov next to him. Probably could be. Didn't look great with Rasmus last year. Showed flashes of what his skills are. Maybe he doesn't even show up. But really, you have two guys you absolutely know are top 4 defensemen. It's Rasmus and Weegar. So if they went and spent $5-6 million on a 2-year deal for someone that you just know can play, 18, 19 minutes a night, it wouldn't stun me.
I still sit and I don't know. We always get excited. Remember last year before the draft, we were all pumped up about potential moves, and then nothing happened. Every team kept its pick. But it sure feels the combination between, we've already talked about the Ottawas, the Buffaloes, teams that have picked plenty in the first round. They've picked high, they've picked low, they've spent all the picks they need to. They need to start to turn the corner. And the uncertainty of the ranking of the draft. If there's some teams that just have guys at different, and sure seems like they do. If you believe what you hear, guys that we had him in top 5, and here he is at 25. That sort of thing. What we could expect. And I said it after the Markstrom deal, but I feel like trades have got to be done for Conroy at this point. But that said, we don't know what the conversations are with Sharon Govich. We don't know what's being said, if anything, with the Rasmus Anderson camp. That'd be the other thing. It's one thing for Coleman and Kadri to maybe be down in the mouth watching guys get dealt. For Rasmus Anderson, he's like, I'm in my prime.
Yeah.
What are we doing here in Calgary? It could be almost a pseudo Matthew Tkachuk thing where I do not intend to be signing an extension. It's a ways out, but I do not see an extension coming. So I'll give you that information, and you're free to do with it what you will, and then see where Conroy takes it.
He kind of floated his own name in trade rumors last year, which was odd. I wouldn't be surprised if behind the scenes there'd be a preference to get elsewhere for all the things you said. His window does not match the Flames. I mean, we talked about it with Markstrom. It's not an if for me, it's when. Like signing Rasmus Anderson to $8 a year times 8 when he's going to be 31 the first year of the deal doesn't seem to fit what they're trying to do here, especially if they get to nab a defenseman in the top 10 in this draft class. So we'll see. I don't think to the point we made earlier, like there's no pressure point on Rasmus. You've got 2 years to figure it out. But if the right pick shows up at the right spot and the right player slides, maybe you say now's the time and we'll go replace him in free agency on a short-term thing. We'll see. Like New Jersey doesn't need the pick. Detroit, pressure's starting to crank up on Stevie Y. Buffalo, everyone's necks are on the chopping block. Ottawa, it's time to be competitive. Utah, you got a brand new owner, a new market. You want to be competitive immediately. That's 5 picks in the top 15 that I don't think anyone would be stunned if they moved out of those to get a player.
Yeah. So Andrew Mangiapane is a Washington Capital. The Flames got a second-round pick. It was original property of the Colorado Avalanche, a second rounder in 2025. So it's another one of these picks that you just got to wait for. You get excited. Yep. What's it going to a first rounder in 2025, 2026? So it's a full-on rebuild, no question about it. And I guess we'll see what they're able to pull off at the draft coming up as early as tomorrow. So I guess just final thoughts on Mangiapane. He was a fan favorite. Yep. I don't know how much was expected of him at the draft. It was just a guy out of Barrie. I remember Dale Howardchuk, his coach, said this guy's going to play. This guy's going to play NHL games. And Mangiapane surprised even him, because the 35 goals was great, but he was kind of a analytic darling, right? Like he was.
Yeah, a 3M line, right? Like him and Backlund and Coleman, and before that it would have been a Matthew Tkachuk in there, and even a Frolik at some point. Like this was a very effective middle six winger for the Flames, and if you can get a guy to sign a pro contract out of the 6th round, you've beaten the odds. Never mind graduate from American League to the NHL and be a depth guy, but he's one of the better picks they've made. Certainly not the best. It's not Tkachuk, it's not Fox, it's not Monahan, but to get a guy out of the 6th round that's having a heck of a solid career, like a guy that's going to play hundreds and hundreds of games, that's a huge win. And he's got a chance to, try to be competitive with Washington. It's certainly a different spot than the Flames. They're trying to convince themselves they can win, where the Flames are like, we'd rather develop a kid or use that slot to get more assets.
And played 6 full seasons in Calgary. That was
good player.
That was a hell of a draft pick. Andrew Mangiapane was a hell of a Calgary Flame.
Hell yeah.
Sure. So what is the story for tomorrow for you? Because I know there were plans and then plans change. What's happening for Barnburner tomorrow?
Well, I'm looking at the screen. I think priority number 1 is going to be finding some aloe vera. I didn't realize I was matching my shirt.
Oh.
I just thought if I maybe just kept the brim tilted a bit.
You know what, though, Ryan?
But the reflection and.
How could you have known Vegas in late June, right? How could you have known?
I'm just going to stay till the end of the first half. I was like, well, and then this guy, I'll get around. We'll stay for the second half. And then it's like, by the time you put the suntan lotion on, it's too late. We're going to have a watch party tomorrow night, 4 p.m. Vegas time, 5 Calgary time. Roll through the whole draft. We've got Kent will join us. Mike will join us. Pike will be around. Cammy made a cameo on the show today. If we get a Western Leaguer taken at 9, absolutely. We got to check in with her to get a little more intel on the human that the Flames have selected. And I don't know if Country Fest isn't rolling yet. It's not that late out there by the time pick number 9 rolls in.
Yeah. I don't think it's Country Fest tomorrow. So is that going to be in lieu? Is that in lieu of the regular show?
That's correct. We don't have a show tomorrow, but we're going to do the big, probably 3 to 4 hour watch party is gotcha. What I think we should forecast it as. I think it was 3.5 the first round last year, maybe a little longer. It's a lot. And they pick at 28. You can't just duck out after 9.
You know what? I don't know if it's ever been said. That might be too much Pinder. 3.5 straight hours, solid hours of it might be
that much. I've thought about that a lot, and Mike and Kent are literally just going to do some stuff. Because people are going to need a break from me. I'm going to need a break from me. Facilities will need to be used.
And
we are indoors.
From you very often, right?
When I sleep,
you don't get a break from you. Yeah, you don't get a break from you. And I like the cameo. That's what it needs to be. Whenever we get cameo on, it's a cameo.
It's a cameo.
That's
for
well
sure.
Done.
Yeah, and I guess my final thought is like we talk about a pick and when it is and when a player might arrive. There's so many picks that the Calgary Flames have right now that I don't expect them to ever stand at a podium and use. I'm fascinated to see what they do tomorrow in terms of upping the quality, using the strength of the quantity of picks that they have.
Yeah. A lot of times the head scout and all the scouts get together draft weekend, and either they don't have a first or the GM trades the first or trades a bunch of picks. The Flames scouts are a very excited crew, I would think.
Yes.
Because they've got a lot of their hard work is going to be looking to come to fruition here, because like you say, even if they move a pick or 2, they've got such a surplus of picks. It's going to be something to watch. So back to the pool.
Potentially. Well, what's the score in that Jays game? They were beating up on the Yankees last I saw.
I think we're out of time. We're right
Out of time. Out of time. All right.
All right.
Aloe vera.
There you go. See you, buddies.
Thanks, Steve.